I hit the button.
Check.
What's up, my man?
How you
I
doing,
think I
brother?
got a clap.
Huh?
I think I got one clap.
You got one clap?
You're not going to record?
I am.
No, like record. Like put the headphones on.
Yeah. Jump in
Jump
with
on
us.
in.
Okay.
Slide up to the
Can I
microphone.
get the volume up in mine?
That
check,
is as
check.
loud as it's going to get. If we
This one?
turn up the mics any louder, it picks up.
Oh,
Yeah.
Everybody.
So it's all done
headphones
in
are-
post?
Headphones
just-
are the same.
The headphones are as loud as they'll get.
No, they're
Okay.
not.
Yeah, they are.
You can turn them up.
Check.
Which one is he on? Is he on 4? Which one?
Check. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, you
Is
like that better?
for you?
You turned mine down too low. There we go. That's too loud. Why'd you do that?
I grew up singing in rock bands. I have tinnitus. I can't. My hearing is.
Huh?
It's a what? Ask her how many times.
Oh,
It's bad, huh?
especially when we're watching UFC. I need or football.
I got surround sound. Why is the TV so loud? I'm like, so I can hear it.
So tell us your name.
Kelly Fisher.
Okay.
K Fish, the hypnotist for my
What?
stage. What for my stage show?
What in the world? So
was
what
the-
are you doing at Mars? This is a marketing conference. What are you doing
I know,
here?
right? Well, it's a funny story. I met Jimmy several months ago at NSA meeting, and we hit it off right away because we have the same heat miser hair. So we just got along right away. And he said, I got a conference coming up I'd like you to speak at. Right after I met, I said, I'd love to. So in the morning, I spoke about anxiety. That's one of my specialties. I'm a certified hypnotherapist. I do a lot of private practice.
Okay.
So in the morning, I did an anxiety seminar. Told them how to get rid of anxiety. Then I came back last night and did my stage hypnosis mentalism routine.
Do what?
What? Wait a second. I read people's minds and then I brought them up and hypnotized them.
That is exactly what David needs in his life right now.
little hypnosis.
He looks a little anxious. So tell us the concept behind all this.
Behind what I presented.
Yeah.
Well, I've been studying the mind and how it works my whole life. So I'm intrigued at human behavior.
Okay.
And anxiety is just across the board. Last night, Jimmy said, how many shop owners are suffering from anxiety? Everyone's hand went up.
Yeah, of
you know?
course.
So, yeah, I mean, I have a whole system. I went through extreme anxiety when my first wife walked out on me. It was part of my speech. And so I developed a program because I got out of it without medication, without any real help. And I was working with a marketing coach. She said, you need a signature program. And I told her about that. She goes, that's it. I said, I'm not reliving that nightmare. You know? But she's like, think about how many people you could help because you got yourself out of anxiety. So it's become my specialty for that reason.
So I went through therapy for anxiety. And it's interesting because every shop owner you talk to, when you talk to them, you can ask them, hey, do you wake up at 3 a.m. and think about the shop? And you can't breathe and your chest feels tight and your heart's beating fast.
They didn't tell you that was normal?
It's part of the gig.
Right.
That's part of the. That's what you sign up for.
Yeah, that's right.
Nobody told me that.
Yeah, nobody told me.
And then you went to go try to fix it, and they didn't tell you that. Hey, the only way to fix it is to get out of shop ownership.
I think I think the only way to fix it is just not exist, right?
Is this some trick questions, sir?
No, I mean, so I went through therapy. I went through cognitive behavior therapy.
Sure.
And mine came from learned behaviors, right? So my anxiety was learned behaviors. I went through a series of things and learned thought processes from other people in my life that created an anxious pathway.
Yep.
And so I would begin to reel, I would think about all kinds of different things, and I would always think of the worst possible outcome. And those were the things that I focused on, right?
Yep.
And so that was the majority of where my anxiety came from. So I reprogrammed the way I thought and changed that kind of electrical pathway to think differently. And for the most part, it's under control, right? It's not like it was. It's not unmanageable like it was.
Right.
So tell me, was your program something like that? What is your program?
Well, the difference is being a hypnotist, I work with the subconscious mind, and all behavior serves a purpose. We want to change that behavior. I do a little reverse timeline. When did it start? Oh, 15 when you had to be on stage the first time or whatever. We go back in hypnosis, the 15, re-trigger that. So when you come back here to the now, it's gone. It's almost like changing the past. We don't remove anything. We just reframe the trigger so it literally doesn't affect you. It's not going to kick in the heart, the fight or flight. So it literally just like we erased it. It's pretty powerful stuff.
That is insane.
It is, yeah. Yeah, I go back. I do a whole time. Most of my clients, we do some kind of age regression because we have to find out where it started.
Right.
The behavior serving a purpose. It's protecting you probably from something, but we got to figure out why. So I'm kind of a mind detective. I like to unravel it. And
Well, so I mean that resonates. Have you ever been through anxiety?
Anxiety. This is giving me anxiety
this
right
is
now.
this is just
This
this.
is got me the camera on me. It's freaking me out.
You are sweating a little bit.
I'm telling you. I don't know why, but maybe we should dive into that.
That's right.
Why is having that camera in front of you freaking you out?
When there's 4 all around you.
No, these are controlled. They're just recording.
Yeah. It's like the observer effect.
Yeah.
Yeah, photons act a certain way until you put a camera on them, and then they act like a solid instead of a. You ever heard of the double slit experiment?
I have heard of the double slit experiment.
They shoot photons through the double slit, and with no one watching, they bifurcate, split, and it makes a spray in the back wall. They put a person or a camera watching it, and they turn into a solid, and you have 2 lines in the back wall. It's unbelievable.
That's insane.
Quantum mechanics. I love quantum mechanics.
That's way over my head. I'm just a simple mechanic, right? I'm not even a technician. I'm just a mechanic.
I attempted to read a book. I never got into it. I never got into it all the way, but I attempted to read a book. The guy was positing that quantum mechanics, which are sort of, they are upending what we know about the physical universe.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not following any of the rules. This doesn't make any sense. It shouldn't be like this.
Yeah.
However, and what he was positing was the reason why is because the philosophy behind underpinning the most of the physics that are going on right now is of a certain nature. Okay. And he said, well, instead of looking at it in this very mechanistic manner, instead of looking at it from a Descartes viewpoint, you need to go back to Aristotle.
Okay.
And Aristotelianism, when looking at quantum mechanics through that lens, you're going to find that it follows. It makes sense now.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, he had a whole book written on it. Is Wolfgang something or another.
Did you make it through it?
I tried to start it.
Tried to start it.
And it's in my list. So I was reading through one other book, and that book was dense. I never finished that book, and that was going to be my next, because he referenced the guy's work in the first book. I think the name of the book that I was going through was called Natural Theology. And so the next, he kept referencing back to this guy's work, and the whole issue of quantum mechanics. And I'm like, well, I want to read that guy's stuff. And so I bought the book and got it ready to go. And
You kind of like started into it.
well, you know how I get. Like,
just
I'm
about
like,
started.
I get
Right.
all the way to the.
That's the story of everything in this dude's life.
It
He
is,
just
yeah.
about started.
We call it shelf help. You buy it, you put it on a shelf.
Yes.
No, it's not like that. I get down these rabbit holes, and I don't make it to the end of the rabbit hole. I
David
will
knows
get
a
about-
lot about a little. Or maybe it's a little about a lot.
Enough
It's
to be
somewhere in
dangerous,
the-
or-
yeah.
No. I know a lot about like 3 things.
There you go.
And those 3 things, but can you really know everything about a particular subject? No.
Yeah.
So you get pretty far down the rabbit hole, but you don't go all the way down the rabbit hole. Sometimes I'll
Right.
just get bored with it or distracted, and I move on to something else.
I mean, it wouldn't be so bad if it didn't take but 3 or 4 minutes for that to happen. But I mean, if you could focus.
No,
for
this
more
is like
than-
this is years.
Yeah.
This is like you obsess over something for
Yeah.
2 or 3 years. You get into it and you obsess.
I'm not like that. I'm like, certain things, yes, but for the most part, I just like jump through
Cranes?
things.
Cranes. Let's watch some crane videos. How long have you been doing that?
Machines.
Okay, well, how long have you been doing that?
Years.
There you go. It's the same thing.
It's a rabbit hole.
Yeah, it's a rabbit hole.
I can see that.
Look at this new machine. Do you know that this machine will swing over? Who cares, dude? I mean, yes, that's great to know. Look,
You're such an ass.
Yeah.
So
Nice. Have you heard of Alan Watts?
I've not.
Oh
heard
my
about
God,
that.
yeah. Because while you were talking, I was thinking about Alan Watts. The way he describes, everything's vibration. Quantum mechanics
okay.
proves that. Observer effect proves it. There's no physical reality. There just isn't. Because the atomus, they thought it was the most indivisible part. That's the name of it. And then they got microscopes that could break it down in bosons and leptons, and everything's moving. And they figured out it's just energy and information when you break it down to the smallest part, which means there's no physical reality. And Alan Watts says, the only reason I can't push my fist through this table is because the table's moving so fast. It's not even actually two objects touching each other. It's bizarre once you get down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Everything's
I could
moving.
see
Everything's
that.
vibration.
Yeah, and I have seen particular data points, especially when it comes to space exploration and things of that nature, of where we have such a limited understanding, and you share that with the majority of the population, and they look at you like you're insane.
Yes.
And I noticed something yesterday because I walked in there as you were speaking first thing in the morning, and you were talking about meditation, right? And so I watched the faces of many of the shop owners in the room, and I'm sure you saw that too when you said meditation, and they go,
Of course.
right,
Yeah.
great,
Who invited this guy?
right? And so I have a special relationship with meditation because it was like my history was that my mom and so like I went to Appalachian State Universities in my community, right? And so in Appalachian State University, they had an anxiety clinic that was taught by one of the world's leading anxiety scientists, right?
Oh.
And so you could go in and you could go through their program if you were local. And the deal was is you were used as research as part of coming into this program. And so one of the first things that they did is like I was in a really bad way when this happened, right? Like lots of things were happening in life. And what set mine off was Tamiflu. And I had a bunch of people around us got right. And this is like probably too juicy for the podcast, but I'm gonna tell anyway. And so I go to the doctor and they said, hey, with everybody else having it, you should go ahead and take Tamiflu to keep you from getting like really sick. And I started feeling really weird.
Yeah.
Right. Really quick. Like, and I said something to them and they said, no, probably just Tamiflu, whatever. Right.
Right.
And I started getting side effect of Tamiflu. And 4 out of 10 people will have like psychological lifetime or lifelong psychological effects from Tamiflu.
Really?
Yeah, if you go look it up.
Wow.
It causes psychosis. And so then they gave me another medicine to try and counterbalance that. That did not go over very well at all. Right? And so, like, I go to this anxiety clinic, and they're like, oh, the reason that you got in here is because you took Tamiflu. And we're studying this. It was the exact time that this little kid in Japan started having hallucinations after taking Tamiflu. And they're like, no, it doesn't have anything to do with that. And then they start, like, diving into it, and they find out, oh, there is, like, a really strong connection. Maybe we should stop this.
Yeah.
They said it's such a small number, and the risk versus benefit of Tamiflu, it was better to keep you from dying from the flu than seeing random dogs run in front of you.
Yeah.
And so I go to this clinic, right? And the first thing they did is they started trying to understand where the thought process came from that caused my initial anxiety, the base anxiety, right?
Yep.
And like weeks and weeks and months, we like narrow it down to this one thing that happened when I was like 14 or 15 years old. And it was crazy the way he went about finding that.
Yeah.
And we go back to this time I was sitting on the couch. I remember where I was sitting in the whole 9 yards. And this lady on TV says, if you're under the age of 80 today, you're going to die of cancer. The probabilities are just so high
Wow.
that that's what's going to kill you, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And so I went years and never thought another thing about that video. It never came into my mind. I never thought anything about it. I take Tamiflu, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere, I'm like freaking out that I'm going to die of cancer.
Wow.
And so we worked back through it. We went through a whole
The
mindful.
Tamiflu didn't give you cancer?
It might have. I mean, now I don't care.
Right. As long as the anxiety's gone.
Right? Yeah, I can
Anxiety's
care.
gone, but you have the cancer. Sorry.
okay. Gotta die
Tamiflu.
Yeah, but so like I went through this whole process, and of all the things, like we did the cognitive behavior therapy and faced some of those fears, right? Like just ran right up to them and looked at them and said, "Hey, guess what? That didn't kill me."
Yep.
Push a little bit further and a little bit further and a little bit further. But of all the things that have stuck with me that had a lasting impact on my life, it was mindfulness meditation, right?
Sure.
Because that made a tremendous difference. And I talk to a lot of shop owners, a lot of techs who have anxiety problems, and I'm like, hey, you need to do this.
Yes.
The one that worked for me, and it's so crazy, and I don't know if you've ever done anything like this, as fast as your brain moves, I could not even imagine being in your brain for this, right? But the one that worked for me was it was this guy, and it was a lead mindfulness meditation. He's talking about balloons. And he said, you envision a balloon is that thought. And as that balloon comes through your mind, the thought comes in and it goes out, and it doesn't affect anything. It doesn't touch anything. And you're imagining it's on this little road or this little pathway.
Right.
And because it's just a thought, it doesn't actually result in anything. And it was retraining myself that I can have all this noise, all these thoughts, all this stuff happening, but it doesn't have to impact who I am, what I'm doing, or where I'm going.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that was a huge one for me. Like, that was what changed everything for me.
Yeah. What comes to mind is don't believe everything you think.
Yeah.
You don't have to entertain every thought.
Yeah. Dude.
One of my favorite ones is so similar. Sitting by a brook, there's leaves going by. When you have a thought, it's a leaf. You put it down, watch it go by.
Yeah.
It's a leaf.
As human beings, we tend to go to the worst possible outcome.
Absolutely.
And if we get in the habit of going to the worst possible outcome, it builds.
You get to the worst possible outcome. He's thinking about it going, okay, they're going to fire me. I run into that situation, but what keeps me from freaking out is going, okay, what's the next step after that?
Sure.
So what happens after that? So the IRS busts in and they do the XYZ. Okay, what's the next step after that? Okay, well, then I do this, then this. Okay, what's the next step after that? And then this. And then what's the next? Like, I've got to figure it out. If I ever freak out, I go, why am I freaking out? It's because I don't have a plan. I just got to come up with a plan. I just got to think this all the way through. I can't take the mind. The leaf is going to jump right back up my nose into the brain, and it's going to turn into a whole thing. So rather than pull it out, I try to let me work this out. Let me work this out to the point of calmness. How can I get this all the way to the point where I have some semblance of control? Because there's some aspects of, like, there's nothing I can do about that. And things that I can't control, those things I do not worry about.
Yeah, that's
you just can't do anything.
That's a good angle for you. It's more what I call zooming out and future pacing. That gives you some security. If something's falling down, you need that. What happens next? That's future pacing, and you're zooming out, going, okay, what's big picture here? That's a great technique, actually.
See, there you go. Great technique.
Mark that down.
Balloon. Take your balloon.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, so the problem is that if you bury yourself into such a hole, right? Because the people who have, like, really severe anxiety disorders bury themselves in such a hole that they will, the thought track is not solve the problem. The thought track becomes, I can't solve the problem. There is no solution to this problem. I am stuck.
Yes.
Right.
I understand that, but that's where I have, like, a problem with, like, and I've encountered it in other people where you're like, okay, hold on. Like, why are you freaking out? Like, let's just go through this problem and let's fix it. I'm a fixer, right? Let's figure out what can you control, what can't you control, and what can we do about what you can control. What's the next step? Because if you had just thinking, I can't. My wife's cousin is a shop owner. He decided he would open a shop, which I tell people not to do. Whatever. He opens the shop, and now he's in the pits of despair. Like he is in a rut, and he's in a sense of hopelessness. He thinks he cannot get out of this. Like, he's done. Yeah. And I'm telling him, like, there's a pathway out. Here's the shovel that way. Yep. That's all you got to do. You'll be out in 2 to 3 months. You'll be out. Yeah. No, I can't. It's hopeless. It's not. Yeah. I don't know how you get to, how do you get to that point where you're just like, there's just nothing I can do. Nothing. Well, really nothing? I think you're still alive. You're still taking breaths. Right. So there's always something that you can do.
Always opportunity, yeah. I think about, like Lucas was talking about, the wiring when he came back to 14 years old. There's probably a trigger that got re-triggered, so to speak, failed at another business, something else. There's a reason. All behavior serves a purpose. Yeah. We want to change it. We got to figure out why. Why is it there? There's a reason for it being there. Like you said, logically, what you're saying is, I got a friend in Chicago. His girlfriend has extreme anxiety. I told her just to get over it. I'm like, don't say that to her. Yeah. Don't say that to her. No. That's what me and you are very. I mean, I've been through extreme anxiety, but now I'm siding with you with the logic. Logic is, yes, of course, there's a way out. So why can't you get a way out? Well, the triggers that we have in the subconscious mind literally fire up neural net in the brain. I call it a river of thought. So when the subconscious keeps firing that river of thought, we try to change it, especially with conscious work. But without changing that river of thought, it's just a trigger. And maybe it was dormant for a while from his last business that failed or wherever the trigger was from. And now all of a sudden it just blew up again. That's most likely what happened.
Yeah. I mean, I can definitely see that. And for me, so my history was when I was very young, I did meth, right? And I did meth for years. Mm-hmm. And so they always said, like my doctor always told me, like happiness was not exactly easy to come by. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
And so, I had learned these thought processes or these behaviors from people in my family that led me to this anxious world. And I thought it was so cool because the doctor, like the lead doctor in the anxiety clinic, he's like, tell me something. I said, what? He said, have you ever noticed anybody on either side of your paternal family, like anywhere in your family, have you ever noticed anybody holding something in their hand? What kind of question is that? Right. Like, I know a lot of everybody. He's like, no, he's like, I'm talking about a napkin, a paper towel. Do you ever notice? Like, and all of a sudden I'm like, how did you know? Because my mom, my grandmother on my mom's side, and my uncle and my cousin always had a paper towel in the hand. And I'm like, well, what does that have to do with anything? He's like, sometimes when people are anxious and they have anxious behaviors, they'll have something in their hand and they'll do this. They'll need to fidget with the hand constantly.
It was the beginning of the fidget spinner. That's exactly why they did it. Exactly, yeah.
And he said, it's just a question I like to ask.
Are you saying that fidget spinners were like, they feed into the anxiety? Like, hey, everybody's anxious. Here's some toys.
Their angle was it's going to ease your anxiety, like he's talking about, Lucas is talking about, by spinning it. But in my opinion, it's one more stimulus. We don't need more stimulus to get rid of anxiety. We need less. So I was down on the podcast yesterday, and John spinning it, and his partner Jim said, "You notice that fidget spinner?" I'm like, "Oh, I noticed that since I walked in the room." Trust me.
Well, and so like what?
No fidget spinners. We can't do the fidget spinners or the poppy things.
No, you have to have those. That's like what keeps you semi-sane. Like if you can't take your ring and move it like this, if you were to take that ring off and leave it at home, we wouldn't have made it through this
airplane
podcast.
One time. I dropped it on an airplane one time and like rolled off because I was playing with it. Yeah.
That's when your heart stops.
Yeah.
What was the I'm curious what the connection was with all your family members holding on to something and what you're going through.
Well, so he related that back and he said, so tell me about their behaviors. Let's talk about their behaviors. Yeah. And so we started talking about it. And it was to them, to the family members, it was weakness. To the family members, it was anxiety is bad, and I don't want to share with anybody because this is embarrassing. We're not going to talk about this. We're not going to talk about the fact we're worried about things. Yep. We're going to keep this quiet. We're going to keep it under wraps. And so he said, I want to talk about their behaviors. I want to ask questions about their behaviors. And he would ask things. And it was things that I never thought about. It was things that like their behaviors just seemed like normal behaviors to me. And the uncle that I was telling you about, it was super abusive and really mean and everything else. Like he walks back through that and he's like, a lot of that was probably his own anxiety, right? And not finding an outlet for it, not finding a way to like manage these feelings. And that particular uncle, he cannot go without a woman, right? If he doesn't have a woman in his life, he unravels, man. This guy completely. And he's like, well, so it could be abandonment. It could be that, where his mom died when he was really young and he wasn't there and he didn't get a chance to say goodbye and he didn't, right? And so we start like breaking down these behavior patterns. And he's asking about like some of the things my mom would say and do. And he would say, so she would ask you about a certain question about your health. And she would say like, hey, don't go do that. And don't go do this. And hey, you need to be really careful doing that. And when I was little, so give you a backstory. When in 1989, the building we lived in did not burn, but our other building right next to it burned. Well, after that, every night, my mom would go all through the house. She would unplug anything that was plugged up that wasn't like a light, and she would move everything out of the hallways. And if you left something in the hallway, she would yell at you. And she would always say, if there's a fire, you want to be able to get out. We need to be able to get out, right? And so I learned those anxious behaviors to the T from my mom.
Yep.
And so one thing, and I've talked to David about this before, is one thing that influenced mine or changed mine was that my parents were very religious. And so they always said, hey, you just pray to God and God's going to fix all the problems and everything's going to be okay. Well, there comes a time in everybody's life when you wake up and realize, like, God or no God, no one's coming to save me. This is on me, right? Like, I got to make it through this. And I think that combination of that, because that was right after we had our daughter and everything else, and it was the realization, like, this is on my shoulders. And so it turned into like it was just the Tamiflu set it off, and it just put me back into a thought process that I had learned as a kid.
That's a great point you bring up, that behavior is handed down. I just had an anxiety client start 2 weeks ago, and she was talking last week to me about she's worried because her 12-year-old daughter has really bad anxiety. And she's like, I'm worried because my mom, my grandmother, it's handed down. I said, I got good news for you. It's DNA is not handed down. Most DNA is not even handed down other than like the look of your child. But I mean, there's a certain small percentage of DNA. The behavior is handed down. It's a big difference. Yeah. I said, as soon as I get you out of this anxiety, watch your daughter change from just your energy is going to change.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And we've talked about a little bit of my wife and that she's a homebody. She likes to be at home, and I see that roll over into my daughter. Right. And we become our parents. Is that what happened to you, David?
I think you have to actively fight it. You're right. It is learned behavior, but you have to fight it. You have to like identify it and do something about it. Because if you don't, you will absolutely become your parents.
But the number of shop owners that we see that are like in the heat of the despair, right? And they can't see the forest for the trees. I think that's the stopping point, right? That's the stopping point, because they get so wound tight that they begin to panic. And once you panic, it's over with, right? Like because you don't allow yourself to panic, right? You just kind of go through it. You might panic when you wake up in the middle of the night worried about the shop for 10 minutes, and then you say, well, I can solve that problem and go on. But panicking stops your mind from being able to solve the problem.
Yes.
Because it can only look at the catastrophe at the end of the day. And you can't get back from that. Like you've got to figure out how to stop yourself and get back from that. And that's hard when you're in the heat of it.
Yes. That's what I explained yesterday in my speech, my talk about the anxiety circle, I call it. The mind, stress and worry is up here. Yeah, we all have it. But when it dumps it into the body and the fight or flight kicks in, what I describe the anxiety circle, and the more that happens, your mind goes, oh shit, the heart rate, and that's literally physically what a panic attack or anxiety attack is. It's whizzing so fast that there's just your A or B. It's fight or flight. Literally A or B. You have no choices, and you feel you have no choices. And once you get that far down that rabbit hole, been there, it's not good.
Dude, it sucks.
It sucks. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, it really sucks. So what's your solution to it?
Solution is, my business my slogan and my life slogan is slow your mind down to the speed you're living. Like Eckhart Tolle talks about the power of now. If you could, like I said, if you could take, and if you're starting to feel, the key to is stopping it before it starts. Catch 22.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But once it starts going down that road, stop. First of all, realizing it. Second of all, stopping, closing your eyes, and taking 3 deep breaths. And I mean as deep as you can, and hold them as long as you can. By the time that third exhale, the body would just start. Yes. It would have to. It's got to follow along. So you can't have anxious thoughts in a completely relaxed body. It doesn't work that way. So breath, body, mind. You have to start with the breath first. Right. I've had clients come into my office and they pulled over, like, I'm going to the hospital. I'm having a heart attack. I'm like, no, you're not. Just pull over, shut the car off. Walk them through them. Close your eyes.
Yeah.
I had so many clients come to me from doctors. I went to the doctor. I thought I was having a heart attack. Like, numbers are fine. They actually sent them to me, a couple of doctors. I'm like, oh, cool.
Right.
Doctor referrals.
That's kind of cool. Yeah. Well, and that comes back to the meditation, right? Because just like the deep breath thing, and I'm sure you've seen these, where you imagine that breath going to a specific spot in your body.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And it was so cool when I began to experience that and pay attention to, through mindfulness meditation, really paying attention to what was going on around me, right? And David fusses at me, my wife fusses at me. I'm like glued to this thing, right? Yeah. All the time. And stuff's going on the internet and things I'm dealing with.
Another stimulant. You need to get that thing turned off.
I don't disagree. I completely agree with you. Yeah. But it would take off. Well, I think human beings today are so stimulated from so many different directions that we never really slow down and smell the flowers, right? They always say slow down and smell the roses. Yep. Well, I think the reason they say that is pretty valid. because we go so hard, so fast all the time that we don't really even pay attention to how we feel. And so health anxiety, right? Because that's the avenue that I fought most with. But I realized when I went through that and I started doing the meditation and the doctors were talking about, they're like, you don't really feel like you are dying. Like, what do you mean? You don't really feel that way. Of course I do. I'm definitely dying. I'm positive I'm dying. I'm sure.
Right.
And they're like, so how do you feel? Well, I don't know. Right. And so I would slow down. I'd go through the mindfulness and they're like, okay, well, what sensations do you feel? Nothing. Right. Like, well, what hurts? Nothing. Right. Like, okay.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden my mind begins to reason back through that and see things differently. The only bad thing about this whole experience for me, like coming out the other side of it, the only bad thing is that I have found that I have to keep myself loaded tight stress-wise, and I have to do more than I should do because I worry about anxiety creeping back in if I have downtime. I'm the guy.
Anxiety is giving you anxiety?
Yeah, kind of.
I heard you mention that yesterday when I stepped in the room. You were talking about it, and the idle mind is just unless you can get control of it. There's a saying: the mind is a horrible master, but the mind is a beautiful servant.
Right.
So once you get in control of it, like I'm like that too. I love having so much going on that I'm so busy. I love that. It does keep me focused, but still, I put the headphones on a couple times a day because I know the power of it.
Yeah,
But I'm like you. It's just like let's just fill it. Let's fill it. Let's keep going.
Well, and the problem is, and I think. I know some shop owners that are doing this right now. The problem is that when you have to turn it off, then that becomes very anxious environment very quickly because when you turn that off, now all of a sudden you have this free time and this free energy that you had directed to something previously and it has nowhere to go except for random misfiring thoughts, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's slowing your mind down to the speed you're living is everything. It's once you get in control of your thought process and really understand, it's a thought, feeling, emotion process. I'm working on my second book right now. It's called The Owner's Manual to This Human Spacesuit We're Born Into. Okay. It's all about the thought, feeling, emotion. Like you said, focus and how you feel. I don't know. Well, focus. It's a different level of focus.
Yeah.
And so we're taking our six senses and breaking it down. That's part of my new book. And just, I'm like, there's no owner's manual. Because I work with so many people. I love doing one-on-one, but I'm saying the same thing. Like thought, feeling, emotion. Everyone's born with this. Once we get in control of this funnel, meaning two people go walk into the room and see the same thing, and I probably wouldn't react. I live in alpha. I meditate every day. I just meditate with my clients. And so somebody else would come in at a higher vibration. There's 4 brainwave frequencies. And if they're at a high vibration of beta, which is 14 to 30 seconds, megahertz per second cycles. I mean, they measure this stuff with the brain. It's cool stuff. You can't get there.
What you've got it like it's the end of the world. One.
Step number 1 is, either learn to meditate or hire someone to help you understand how to slow your mind down, because that fight or flight is just Einstein said we can't fix a problem from the same level of thought that created the problem. That's what he's talking about, the conscious mind. Yeah. Conscious mind's out of control. We can't fix it from there. That'd be like putting a Post-it on the refrigerator door. I'm calm and relaxed. It doesn't work that way. Yeah. So we have to start with the breath, body, mind. So when even the relaxation I did yesterday, 3 deep breaths, always. My clients, personal, private, me, always 3 deep breaths. Sends a signal to the subconscious mind. Oh, we're going to that relaxed place. You get there quicker with more practice. Then you relax the physical body. White light healing. We just visualize a white light completely. 70 trillion cells in the body, all listening. We shut them all down and relax. Now we start to work with the mind. Yeah. But like I said, you cannot have an anxious thought in a completely relaxed body. It's not the way it works.
Yeah. And one thing that I would share about all that is that, especially when it comes to the mindfulness meditation, it takes practice.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. First time you do it, you're going to sit there and your mind's going to be going a million miles an hour and you're not going to be able to stop it.
Yeah.
And you're going to have these thoughts and you're going to say, this is stupid. This doesn't work. And the second time you do it, you may feel the same way. And the third time it starts slowing down a little bit.
Yeah.
5th or 6th time you get to the point. And then eventually for me, it got to the point that we're boring David to death.
No.
He's in deep meditation.
Okay. Yeah. I'm meditating over here.
It eventually got to the point that I didn't even necessarily need to meditate in the same way.
Right.
I could, if I started feeling that way, I could stop it because I could say, okay, let's recenter here a little bit. Let's take a deep breath and make sure we're on the same page.
Yeah, you hit it on the head with that's what I teach people, and I even said it yesterday that most everyone comes to me and says, "Well, I can't meditate. I tried to meditate." I said, "Let me tell you what happened. You sat down, you closed your eyes, the conscious racing thoughts sped up. Said, what are we doing? We got work to do. We don't have time for this new age crap. Get up." That's happened, right?
Yeah.
So yes, as long as you know that's going to happen, your conscious mind is your ego. It's not used to being shut off. So going into meditation, that's its job. Ego is like a radar on a ship. Boop, boop, looking for trouble. If it can't find trouble, that's part of its job. And so it can't find trouble. You try to shut it down. It's not having it. So it's going to speed up, go, no, danger, Will Robinson, danger.
Yeah.
But like you said, with practice, all of a sudden, Deepak Chopra calls it the gap. All of a sudden, like 2 or 3 seconds, you don't realize where you're at. Then it comes back in and, oh, we don't have time for this. That gap is meditation. It could, like that. Yeah. That's why you said it gets so much easier with practice. I call it mental gymnastics. It's just, I used to be a personal fitness trainer, so I always compare the two. Right. But this is like mental gymnastics. You get there, you start doing controlled flips instead of out of controlled flips.
Right. Get it back to a base level.
Yeah.
What do you think, David? You're always skeptical of things like meditation and stuff.
What are you talking about? No, I put headphones on, play the ASMR, going in just to
there you go,
relax.
Yeah,
I can't do what you do, like the constant. Like you have to watch yourself because you'll get sucked into it. And we're not telling you about the guy that was like flipping between Facebook, email. It was going back and forth in the airport, just. Back mindlessly, just back and forth, just looking for like, I gotta get going. What's going on? Like, dude, I can't. No, I don't want to be that.
Yeah, I get a kick on the airplane, eavesdropping, looking over people's shoulders, like, wow, man, just slow your mind down. You can't. You're not even looking. You're scrolling so fast.
Yeah, and they're flipping between apps.
Right.
It's like, oh, maybe this app will have some. Nope. This app will have some. Nope. This app will have something.
That's like, it's got to be a dopamine kick.
It is. See, that's all you're looking for. You're just like, I need dopamine. Give me. No.
Was it you that shared the video with me about a dopamine detox? Was that you that shared that?
Maybe. That sounds familiar. I don't.
That we as a society we've become so dependent on it, and everything we touch in some way or another. And I think marketing companies. We're at a marketing conference. I probably shouldn't say that, but I think marketing companies play into that, right?
Absolutely.
And they know how to manipulate that, and they understand the psychology of it. And so they begin to manipulate it, and eventually you have a whole society of human beings that can't turn off and is not well balanced or rounded or.
Well, like with the phone thing, like you got to turn off some of those notifications. Like I'm talking to you.
Specifically.
You have to turn off some of those notifications. You have to just tell it no, because that's going to be a trigger. Every single time that thing goes, it's like,
Pavlov's dog.
Yeah.
Bing.
And you're like, oh, I gotta look. You just and then checking emails when you're not, you're in Utah. You're not anywhere near your shop. You're not gonna be able to fix anything. Forward that stuff to someone who can handle it, and then just leave it alone. Leave it alone. The problem will be there when you get there on Monday.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was trying to avoid.
I was going to say, unless you hand it to someone good, and then it's not there. But yeah,
I was just kind of hoping we could avoid having a problem on Monday.
Right.
Well,
see, if I solve the problem now, it's not as big of a problem.
You're not going to solve the problem now. All you're going to do is get anxious and then realize I can't do anything from here, or I'm going to start taking phone calls. You're like, "Where are you? I'm in Utah at a conference." Like, why are you calling me? Why are you like? This is not a here and now problem. This is a tomorrow problem. I can't do anything. Or I can just slough it off to somebody to handle it. Hey, can you read this through, figure out, get a solution put together and handle it. Make it go away.
He says this, but when he talks to his employees, he's speaking in Spanish. So I don't hear that he's doing the same thing.
I'm not. I don't do what you do. That's insane. What you're doing is nuts. I can't do it.
I am pretty insane. I will give you that.
But you're making yourself worse with the constant notifications and constant I got to be meddled in this. I've told you this 1,000 times. Like, you got to be meddled in this chat and then that chat and then this chat. You have 85 chats going at once. 85. And then on top of that, he takes phone calls from randos. Nice randos. We love our listeners. Every single one of you. I love y'all. But they call him and he takes the phone call.
Yeah.
And then that turns into a 2-hour conversation.
Absolutely.
I got to fix your problem right now. Let's talk through this. Now all he's done, he still has 85 notifications coming in every second. Bloom, 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 bloom. And because he has blocked everything off, because I'm going to spend 2 to 3 hours on the phone with this person. They get off the phone with him, and then he's like, "Oh, I got 8,000 notifications I got to handle right now. All these chats I got to get caught up with." I muted all those suckers. Every single one of them.
Most of them are muted.
Mute. It's like, I can't keep up with this. Brian Pollock, he's got a lot going on, but he cannot have as much going on as what you got. I'm just telling you can't. Because I have a small sense of what you got going on, and I'm just telling you I couldn't handle it. And he can't handle it. I can tell you most people can't. And so he can be involved in metal and all that stuff. But dude, you've got too many fires.
I don't disagree. With you.
David, you said something profound earlier about this. I tell all my clients, separating what you can control, what you can't control. It's a huge one.
Yeah,
it's huge.
You can't, if you can't control. That's why we were asking about attendance at conferences, and you're like, well, the economy. It's like, dude, it's not the economy. It's not the economy. It's not. And if it was, there's nothing we can do about it. What can we control? I don't know. Not have 55 in a row. Maybe let's start there. That we can control.
Yeah.
Told you that last year, but whatever. Don't listen to me. What do I know?
I every time I listen to you, I end up in trouble.
It's when you don't listen to me that we end up in trouble.
Listen or take his advice. Which one?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. If I take the advice, we're in bad shape. It's going to be a bad thing. It's going to be a bad thing.
And you can't let some things bother you.
Well, in all seriousness, like I spoke about depression yesterday, the word depression, I do it with a lot of words. Usually angry at yourself. You start to depress down on your own emotions. That circle gets so small that you think there's no way no one can feel what I'm going through. And like you talked about a shop owner sitting there at night, that's what's going on. I have a sliding scale of it's overwhelm, anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts, stress is up there. It's a sliding scale of, once you pass anxiety and you don't control it, like you said, it takes too long. You stay there too long, that starts depressing down. So now we're on a whole different journey we have to get back out of. So I've been through extreme anxiety. I talk about the suicidal edge. I mean, I was down at the bottom.
Yeah.
Good news is I got back out, and there's a way out. But it leads you to say, well, why do you have anxiety? Why do you have anxious thoughts? They might be down that scale even further, where it's just no hope. It's depression. That's where you slide into.
Yeah. I was watching a video of the lead singer of Linkin Park.
Oh, sure, Chester.
Yeah, okay. So he killed himself, right? But he was talking on a radio show, and they were laughing about it. He was very serious. He was talking about, I've got this internal voice in my head, and that inside Chester starts telling me some things. I can't be in there. I can't be in with inside Chester.
I just got chills. I love Linkin Park, man.
Yeah, and the radio host you could tell was a little bit of an anxious, nervous laugh, and he's like, ha ha ha. And he's like, I can't be in there because once you get in there, I may not come back out.
It's a bad place to be. He said, yeah.
It was crazy to see him, like he was intensely trying to convey. And, the video was like, man, there were signs. There were already signs.
Yeah, I watched a bunch of those interviews rather. And after that, you just listen to all the songs, Crawling in My Skin. I mean, you listen, he's saying it in every song. Yeah. It's amazing when you look back at it.
No.
Yeah.
Can we get really good art though without the angst?
Great question. I knew I had a feeling you were going to go there. It's like, would John Belushi be so funny without all the coke? Probably not. I mean, with Jimi Hendrix without putting acid in his headband? Probably not.
That's what they say. You get this band that comes out, puts the debut album out, and they pour everything into that album. It's everything they've been through, all of their emotions, everything. And then they have to do the follow-up. And all of that's already come out.
Yep.
They can't follow it up. The second album's never as good.
Yeah.
Some bands, second
rarely
album's pretty good. It's rare. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what is your take on? We've seen a lot of talk about it recently, but psychoactive substances and its effect on anxiety, depression, things like that.
Sure, I'm all for it. I think it's big pharma is going to fight like hell not to let that take over, but
they'll monetize it.
Well, if they can't figure it out, yeah, they couldn't figure out how to monetize weed. That's why it took so long. But yeah. It's a quick fix. I mean, well, let me rephrase that. I was watching a program. I think it was on Gaia, a streaming platform I watch. But there's a guy who was PTSD. He was from the war, and he was so suicidal. He said he wanted to kill his daughter too. It was a 2-day session. I think it was psilocybin, which is mushrooms, with a couple of coaches in the room with him, and they interviewed him the third, fourth day after, and he was so it was a different person. He goes, "Yeah, I'm so relaxed. I have no suicidal thoughts." So it's so much more powerful than big pharma. I'm not into big pharma. The chemicals they do. I mean, I tell people that ADHD was invented by big pharma. There's no such. But the definition is in the title. Attention. So learn to pay attention. I mean, I don't want to oversimplify it, but that's what we're talking about. So they say ADHD. Oh, by the way, we got a chemical for that, which really doesn't cure anything. It just masks.
No, it doesn't.
So I think it's a new wave, but it's going to be hell getting through with big pharma owning everything.
Well, and we were talking yesterday about a friend of mine who had a heart attack in the shop, right? Mm-hmm. And he said that after that heart attack, like life was never the same again. And I said, well, what do you mean? He's like, I didn't take it as seriously. He's like, it wasn't like I made a conscious decision and said, oh, you were really sick and you did, you almost died and you have to change your thought process now. He's like, no, when I woke up, I was not the same person I was before. There was something very different.
Epiphany.
Yeah. And it changed, and they even talked about different ways that it could have happened within the heart attack, the electrical signals, whatever could have changed.
Rewired his brain.
Yep. Yeah, for sure.
Is that what those psychoactive chemicals do?
That's what they say. Yeah.
Rewires the brain. Mm-hmm. I'd be freaked out if I were to the point where I'm suicidal and I also want to take the life of my children.
Yeah.
I could come out of that and feel fantastic, but I'd be like you are, just anxious that something will trigger me right back into that spot. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't just rewire the brain, the psychoactive medicines, plant-based medicines. Mm-hmm. It rewires your consciousness, which is outside of your brain. Your brain's like a computer. Your consciousness is like an aura, not to get too metaphysical, our overshadowing soul, where all our answers are. It rewires and sets this whole outside of the brain system also. So that's why it's much more powerful.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people who say it and it needs to be guided though, right?
Oh God, yes.
It can't just be, you don't just go like eat some shrooms and go take a trip, right? Like it's that they have professionals that do this. And this is being researched in like major research universities now. There's a number of these chemicals, not just mushrooms and not just LSD, but I mean, there's other chemicals that they're finding. Isn't it, ketamine?
Ketamine. I was watching that documentary. They had 4 different. It was LSD. It was a psilocybin, which is mushrooms, and I can't bring up the other 2. But they did a whole documentary I watched on actual patients that went in with the different modalities and how they came out the other side. It's amazing.
Yeah, and never used it ever again.
Right.
And never relapsed and never went back to that same problem. And especially for like your vets who are having a really hard time.
Yeah.
That's the one that, because those guys, I know some of them, man. And it's rough to see what some of those people go through.
Yeah.
Because some of them come back and it's like they've had to do things and make decisions that most of us.
Sure. That was one of my greatest experiences working with a Vietnam vet. 47 years since Vietnam. He couldn't sleep through the night. When I went to see him, he pulled up this gun. He's like, I get up in the middle of the night. Da, 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 da. I'm like, it's kind of scared me a little bit. I'm like, oh, that was real. And he's imitating it. Yeah. And so by the 3rd session was the first time he slept through the night in 47 years. I said, oh my God, like, Robert, can I get a testimonial with you? And he was talking to an older black gentleman, just such a sweetheart. And he's like, you came in, no medication, told me to close my eyes and slow my heart rate down. And it worked. He sent me his friend that was in the military also. It's just, it's phenomenal.
Well, but the problem is, and I've talked to a doctor who works for the VA about this, and he pointed out that, our MO for this, the way that we treat this, for not a prescribed reason, right? Like,
Sure.
boys, it changes you. And it not only does it change you, but it is super addictive, right? Like, there's nothing make you meaner than eating a ladder bar and then running out of them, right? That makes you very mean. I just want to point that
A
out.
what?
They come in different doses, and they make them into this one that has these little lines on it, and you're supposed to break them off. You're not supposed to eat the whole thing. But
Like a Twix.
yeah,
Really?
yeah. And so
They do.
and so like,
That's weird.
especially if you mix it with alcohol and other things, that's a dangerous pathway to go down, because the problem is it gets you into a cycle where you can't do without it.
Correct.
Right? And if you do without it, because what's happened to a lot of these guys is then they have to stop taking it. The doctor won't prescribe it. The doctor's worried about a potential addiction problem. And so, and they get somewhat accustomed to it, or they build up a tolerance to it. So now the anxiety comes back. So they need to take more, and they can't ever get comfortable. They're miserable always. And then they stop taking it. And what do? They go effing crazy and beat the hell out of somebody.
Well, their anxiety comes back even worse, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And what that does, and I got this word from my clients, and a lot of them, zombification.
Yeah.
I feel like a zombie. The medications don't make you feel better. They don't make you feel. Huge difference. And I've been through extreme anxiety. So if you're in extreme anxiety, you take that so you don't feel that, I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
But there has to be a path of weaning off and getting back to
But man, the problem is, and I don't want to tell somebody if somebody's been told to take medication. I don't want to tell them not to take it by any means.
Beyond my
right?
scope of practice.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're told to take medicine, don't stop taking it. It always led me to a worse place than I was in initially, because trying to get back away from it was a bigger problem altogether.
Yeah.
Right? And so now, instead of having one problem, what have I done? I've created compounding problems, multiple problems, and now trying to solve them is far more miserable than it was just yesterday.
Yeah.
Because now this feels really shitty, because I'm mad, I'm anxious, and I don't feel good.
Right.
And all I want to do is go to sleep. And so what have you done? You've created a freaking monster.
Yeah.
And it just continues to get worse and worse and worse. It never gets better.
Yeah. I think I've saved them by working with them, but I was in LA. I was my auto mechanic I was going to, and he's like, he knew what I did for a living. He's like, listen, they gave me this medication. You already had the prescription. They gave me this medication, but I don't want to take it. I just can't handle this anxiety. So I come in my office. So he came in, big burly guy. I walked around my desk. We're standing face to face. And I said, what's wrong right now? And he goes, well, next week I have to take I give him a Caesar Milan. Nope. Little dog whisper. Nope. Right now. Heart of gold, this guy. So many people eating off this man's plate. And it's like, what's wrong right now? 2 weeks I have done no and I swear to God, we did this for like 30, 35 minutes.
Yeah.
And then I could read his consciousness, his energy. All of a sudden it came in the room, and he looked at me. I said, right there, that's where you make decisions from. He's like, whoa, I've never felt that before. I'm like, you're in the now. You're relaxed. This is where you make decisions from. That was a Friday. I saw him next week. He said, it was great. It lasted all day Friday, but Saturday I said, great. One whole day. Great start. That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, you have to train yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have to train it into yourself.
Yeah.
Is that what you've done, David? Is that how you're smart
He's
and
got
so
Jedi mind
chill?
control. I could tell by his eyes.
Yeah. Is that what's?
I've been telling you with the ASMR, just get those headphones on, you get the soft clicky noises, and you're just.
Do you do a specific one, like
on.
a specific noise when you do that, or you just?
It's got to be like certain voices.
Okay.
There was this one guy. He was a healer, but it's his voice and his cadence.
Sure.
And he would go like this, and he's like, "You're healed of this," and then some other little old lady would come down, and lay down, and there's. People get into this stuff. So there's an hour and a half loop of him doing these 3-minute sessions. It's the same 3 minutes, just a loop for an hour and a half. But then they equalize it and they get the headphones just perfect. And so you get some really good headphones. You put them on and you just listen to this really like calming voice. Yeah. It's nonsense. You don't listen to what's going on, but it's just the guy's talking. You're just like,
There's one called Nemo's on YouTube, and it's like oldies music, but it's played from a different room. And then it's like raining. So it's like you're in a different room and there's a party going on downstairs, and it like that's the kind of thing that I go for.
But that's just like, that's white. For me, that's white noise. That's
no,
like,
because you got the oldies music in the background, and then you hear conversations. The things I like are like you can hear them setting things down on tables. Right. I don't know why that, like, for me, that's the thing, is like you can hear the noise. I go back to a time when I was in elementary school, because our elementary school was a old elementary school that did not have AC in it. It had these old, like, fold out windows,
Yeah.
and I always remember the sound of sitting there almost falling asleep in class and the fan blowing in the classroom. Right. And I'm like, I don't know why that stuck with me for years and years.
Very hypnotic.
Right. So I can,
But yeah, that's what it is. It's hypnotic. I've got one of a Japanese guy explaining the features of a flash on a camera. And he's just going through and he's explaining every little feature of the thing for an hour.
Yeah.
And he's just, and that's what I listen to. And that's just playing. And it's so relaxing to me. I don't think it clears my mind. It slows down to nothing. It just stops. And if I do feel like, hey, something's coming on or whatever, then I need to switch the video.
Right. That's how I go to sleep. Right. Is I like have to have that noise. I have to have something in the background because if I don't, my mind just runs nonstop.
Yeah. Last night we were at the hotel and she's like, "You coming to bed?" I said, "I got to unwind. I just performed like an hour ago." So I'm sitting there. So what are you watching? Bill Maher. I hate politics. I don't listen to politics. That's why I was watching it. Right. So I could just numb out because I didn't care about it.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Well, tell us the name of your books.
Well, my book is Weight Loss from the Inside Out, A Mind and Body Awakening. It's on Amazon. When I was still doing personal fitness trainer and doing hypnotherapy, I combined the two for the book. It's all about controlling your mind. I just geared it towards weight loss because that's the industry I was in, but that's my first book that's out.
And then you're getting ready to have another one out soon?
Yeah, I'm with this other company, the speaking gig, and I think in a few months we do it through AI. I have the kind of outline anyways for my book I want to write, and then we're going to apply AI. And supposedly, I spoke to a handful of people that already went through this program in 6 weeks. Have the book done. I'm like, wow, it took me 3 years to write my first one.
Right.
I'd write some stuff and then come back and months later, and it took me 6 weeks. I'm all in.
That's it. There you go. Well, thank you so much for being here. It's been a blast.
Thank you guys. Hey, if anybody needs this help, I have a free guided meditation on my website.
Okay.
Yeah, it's globalmindstretch.com.
Okay.
It's a 15-minute meditation. It's called Introduction to Anxiety. If you've never done it before, I explained the first 5 minutes of what you're going to expect so you can really get practice going. It's for free.
Right. Very cool. Well, thank you for sharing.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
See you, buddy.
Thank you.